So I'm sitting in the makeup chair the other day, and a particular memory, a rather pungent one, wafted into my mind like the stale scent of industrial carpet cleaner at the Fox lot in, 98, 99 perhaps. The wedding room. Not just any waiting room, but that particular antechamber of artistic purgatory, where every actor for a certain type of expositional antagonist role was, by some unwritten decree, consigned to wait. The chairs, molded plastic, facing a perpetually closed door through which muffled snippets of a scene would escape. And the sides, the sides, always stapled, often coffee-stained, dialogue so devoid of human nuance, so utterly functional, that one might as well have been reading a grocery list aloud with dramatic intent. It wasn't about performance, you see. It was about fitting a preordained mold, demonstrating competence in the face of utter banality, a curious form of theatrical masochism, wouldn't you say?
A sharp, almost barking laugh, followed by a dismissive huff. Banality. Yeah, that's one word for it. I got another. Humiliation. Remember those goddamn stapled pages? You'd get Millum, right? 3 lines, tops. You're the sleazy landlord. Or corrupt cop number 2. No name, no arc, just boom, deliver your dirt, get out. Or get killed. You usually get killed. And the room? Forget the carpet cleaner, Steven. It smelled like ambition and cheap cologne, mixed with the dread of 1,000 actors who knew they were already the punchline before they even opened their mouth. They just wanted to see if you could look the part, sound the part of the guy who ruined somebody else's day. Like a bad hand in poker, you knew the minute you walked in, you were just there to fold.
A slow, contemplative nod, a slight softening of consonants on subtlety, precisely. The visual shorthand. It was never about the subtlety of one's interpretation, but rather the immediate, almost cartoonish, recognition of an archetype. They weren't seeking a performance, they were validating a preconceived notion. You'd spend hours, perhaps days, preparing, delving into the hypothetical inner life of the bureaucrat who misplaces the crucial document, only to be met with a gaze that said, "Ah, yes, him. He certainly looks like he could misplace a document." It was less an audition and more a theatrical lineup, wouldn't you agree? Identifying the usual suspects.
Rapid fire, leaning in, a slight nasal twang. The lineup! That's it, like you're already guilty. And then the wait. You're stuck there, watching guys who look exactly like you, probably are you, go in and do the same damn 3 lines. You hear them from inside sometimes, through the thin walls, and you're thinking, is that my cadence they're looking for, or just a cadence? And the casting director, some kid who looks like he just got out of film school, he's got that bored look, like he's already made up his mind before you even walk in. You try to put a spin on it, right? Make corrupt cop hash 2 inches a little more human, and they just stare. No, just read it like it says. More, Weaselly, for Christ's sakes. I could practically hear him thinking, yeah, he's got that rat look down. It was an insult to the craft, a slap in the face. What a racket.
A gentle chuckle, a Texan drawl momentarily surfacing. Indeed, Joe. An insult to the craft. The entire enterprise, at times, felt less like an artistic endeavor and more like a theatrical sorting hat, if you will, always placing us in our prescribed houses, the expositional, the obstructionist, the duplicitous. A very specific kind of house. But look, Joe, I brought you here to talk about the project, the one that got away. Joe, my friend, thank you for making the time. There's a particular vintage of light filtering through your window this afternoon, isn't there? It reminds me of a specific quality of light I've envisioned for a project. A very personal project, you see. One that has lived in the quiet, dusty corners of my mind for, nearly 2 decades now. It's a film, my vanity, as they say. Albeit a vanity born not of ego, but of a desperate, almost primal, need for understanding. And, perhaps, a touch of self-correction. It's called, and I hope you find the title as evocative as I do, The Infinite Interregnum. Less than center greater than. Now, before we even get to the narrative, Let me paint you a picture, Joe. Let me describe the very first frame, because the opening shot, you see, is not merely exposition. It is the philosophical thesis statement of the entire endeavor. We open, not on a vast landscape, nor a dramatic confrontation, but on a single, mundane object. A button, a small, gray, four-hole button, likely polyester or some equally unromantic composite, lying forlornly on a carpet. But this isn't just any carpet, Joe. This is the industrial, institutional-grade carpet of a forgotten wing in a vast, sprawling governmental archive building. The kind of carpet designed for wear, not for beauty. The kind that absorbs sound and light and, one suspects, the very ambitions of those who walk upon it. The weave is tight, a muted charcoal flecked with even more muted specks of gray and beige, like the scattered ashes of 1,000 forgotten memos. The camera. And ideally, Joe, ideally, we shoot this on a meticulously restored, custom-housed Panavision Millennium DXL2, but with vintage anamorphic lenses, to give us that rich, slightly imperfect, almost breathing quality. It holds on this button. And it holds. For perhaps 20, 30 seconds, we are invited to contemplate the button, its stillness, its profound insignificance, and yet its absolute material presence. A tiny island of manufactured detritus in a sea of woven synthetic fiber. The ambient sound, initially, is just the faint hum of distant HVAC, a white noise so pervasive it's almost a silence. Then, the camera begins a slow, almost imperceptible push-in. Not a zoom, mind you, that's far too aggressive. A patient, deliberate push-in. We get closer. We see the subtle sheen on the button's surface, reflecting a distant, weak, fluorescent light that probably hasn't been replaced in a decade. We see the microscopic dust motes dancing in that meager beam, like tiny, transient souls. The sound design subtly shifts here, Joe. The hum remains, but beneath it, we start to hear something else. A very, very faint, almost subliminal ticking. Or is it just the hum? Is it the sound of time passing? Or the sound of an ancient mechanism slowly grinding? Or perhaps the sound of a very small, very lonely heart beating? The ambiguity is vital. Push-in continues until the button fills the frame, a gray, cosmic disk scarred by infinitesimal scratches, a silent testament to, what? Loss? Discard? The simple, unavoidable entropy of the universe operating on the smallest scale? It is, in its own quiet way, an invitation to a meditation.
Leaning forward, brow furrowed in concentration, but a flicker of fascination in his eyes. A button. Okay, I'm with you, Steve. A button. But the silence. The hums. It's very specific. Less than center greater than, less than, slash center greater than.
It is, Joe. Precisely. Specificity, you see, is where the universal often resides. And that button, that seemingly insignificant button, belongs to Arthur Pendleton. And Arthur Pendleton, you will have surmised, is the role I wrote for myself. Now, for years, Joe, for decades, really, I've been cast as the, let's be frank, the architect of minor frustrations, the smarmy bureaucrat, the condescending boss, the man who delivers the bad news with a polite, almost apologetic smile, the guy who explains why you can't do something, the exposition machine, the cog in the system. And I've relished it, truly. There's a certain precise satisfaction in playing the antagonist to a hero's ambition, to be the immovable object, to be the polite, articulate face of obstruction. But Arthur Pendleton is none of those things. Arthur is the antithesis of those things. He is the victim of the bureaucracy, not its master. He is the one receiving the bad news, not delivering it. He is the subject of the exposition, not its dispenser. Arthur is a retired actuarial clerk, a man who spent 43 years, Joe, 43 years, meticulously, diligently, and with an almost spiritual devotion, working in the Department of Provisional Records for Transient Anomalies. Imagine that title, Joe. It's like something out of a Kafka novel, isn't it? The DPRA. No one, not even Arthur, truly understood what they provisionalized, or what the transient anomalies actually were. But he filed the forms. He cross-referenced the entries. He ensured the numbers balanced. It was a life of quiet, numerical rectitude. A life lived in the serene certainty of the decimal point.
A small, involuntary chuckle, Department of Provisional Records for Transient Anomalies. That's a mouthful, Steve. Sounds like a place you'd try to find a parking ticket. Less than center greater than, less than slash center greater than.
A warm, knowing smile. Or, perhaps, a missing button, Joe. Exactly. And that's where our story truly begins. Arthur, long retired, living a quiet, meticulously ordered life in a small apartment filled with antique maps and classical music, receives a letter. A rather innocuous letter, really. A summons for a routine, administrative review. A final audit, they call it. Just a formality, they assure him. A final closing of the ledger, so to speak, on his lengthy government service. He arrives, of course, punctually, dressed in his best, slightly worn tweed jacket, carefully chosen, meticulously brushed. And in the course of this routine review, in a room that feels both sterile and suffocatingly ancient, he realizes, with a dawning, terrifying clarity, that one of the buttons from his jacket, a button of significant sentimental value, a gift, you see, from his late wife, sewn on by her own hand, has gone missing. This, Joe, is not a narrative about a grand conspiracy. It's not about finding the button in a literal sense. That's far too pedestrian. No. The missing button becomes the catalyst. Because, in the process of him trying to understand how it went missing, in his quiet, almost desperate attempts to retrace his steps, to account for this single, tiny, seemingly insignificant loss, the entire edifice of his carefully constructed life begins to unravel. The administrative review becomes less about his government service and more about his entire existence. The anonymous bureaucrat interviewing him, an actor of impeccable, almost unnerving stillness, I envision, slowly, methodically, begins to question him not about his files, but about his memories, his regrets, his definition of purpose, his moments of kindness, his moments of cruelty. Every decision, every interaction, every fleeting thought that shaped Arthur Pendleton becomes subject to review. He's being cataloged, Joe. Not just his work, but his soul. My character, you see, is stripped bare. He's no longer the one pulling the strings, or even observing them. He's the string itself, laid out for examination. He's vulnerable, deeply, achingly vulnerable. And for the first time, in a role, I would be allowed to explore that raw, unadorned emotional landscape, to embody a man who, despite his quiet exterior and meticulous habits, contains a universe of unspoken anxieties, profound longings, and a desperate, beautiful yearning for connection and meaning in a world that often feels utterly indifferent.
He's leaning back now, a thoughtful look on his face, occasionally nodding slowly. He seems genuinely engrossed. So, it's like the ultimate exit interview for your life, and the button is the MacGuffin. But it's not really the button, it's what the button represents. It's the little quiet things that get lost, but they're actually everything. That's pretty profound, Steve. Less than center greater than. Less than slash center greater than.
Precisely, Joe. Precisely. The button is the infinitesimal crack in the dam, through which the entire ocean of a man's consciousness begins to flow. Arthur. My Arthur. He has no dramatic speeches. No sudden acts of defiance. His heroism lies in his quiet perseverance, in his willingness to confront the profound emptiness that often underpins our most carefully constructed realities. He is, for the first time in his life, truly seen. And in being seen, he must see himself. We'd show this through a series of exquisite, almost painterly flashbacks, triggered not by a character's dialogue, but by a subtle shift in light, a particular quality of dust motes in the air, a scent, a half-remembered phrase, where Arthur revisits fragments of his life. Not the grand moments, Joe, but the interstitial spaces, the silent commutes, the quiet moments of observation, the subtle kindnesses offered and received, the almost imperceptible acts of love and betrayal. He begins to understand that the transient anomalies he spent his life cataloging were, in fact, the very essence of human experience itself. The fleeting, unquantifiable moments that defy easy categorization. The camera, in these moments, would become almost a character in itself, fluid, observant, lingering on the texture of a teacup, the pattern of sunlight on a floor, the almost imperceptible tremor in Arthur's hand as he recalls a memory. We would use close-ups not for dramatic impact, but for intimacy, to draw the audience into the subtle landscape of his inner world. The very air in the film would feel heavy with memory, with the accumulated weight of a life lived. And the ending, Joe. The ending is not a grand resolution. It's not a discovery of the button, nor a triumph over the bureaucracy. No. It's a quiet, almost poetic acceptance. Arthur leaves the review, the hum of the HVAC still echoing in his ears, a profound, almost shattering peace settling upon him. He understands, finally, that the purpose of the Department of Provisional Records for Transient Anomalies was not to categorize life, but to acknowledge its unquantifiable, beautiful, maddening, and often heartbreaking mystery. And that missing button? It was never truly lost. It was simply redistributed, a tiny piece of himself, and of his late wife, now part of the vast, intricate, unknowable ledger of the universe. An act of letting go, of realizing that true worth isn't in what you cling to, but what you allow to pass through you, leaving its subtle, eternal mark. My hope, you see, is that the audience leaves not with answers, but with a renewed sense of the profound beauty in the overlooked, the value in the vulnerable, and the quiet heroism in simply being. A counterpoint, perhaps, to all those times I've been the one telling someone, politely, that their dreams are, regrettably, not feasible. This time, my character becomes the feasible dream, simply by allowing himself to be fully, utterly human.
He sits up straight, exhaling slowly, a stunned, thoughtful expression on his face. He looks at Stephen for a long moment. That is a lot. That is genuinely a lot, Steve, but hear mine. Stephen, my man, thanks for having me back on this, what do you call it, a digital confessional? A podcast? Yeah, you always got the good questions, the real questions. Most of these jabronis, they just want to talk about the Goonies or some shit. No offense to the Goonies, God bless it, but you go deeper. You're like a spiritual archaeologist, digging through the rubble of a man's soul.
That's high praise, Joe. I just try to listen. And speaking of digging deep, you mentioned last time you had a passion project, something you'd written yourself?
Ah, you remembered? See? That's why I like you, Tobolowsky. You listen. Yeah, I got a script. Been kicking around for years. Can't get a dime for it. Hollywood? They don't want it. They don't understand it. But it's my baby, you know? My white whale. My goddamn mirror.
Intrigued. What's it called?
It's called Stephen, the Measure of a Rat.
The Measure of a Rat. Provocative.
Provocative? It's a goddamn declaration. It's my life story, distilled into 2 hours of pure, unadulterated street poetry. And I wrote the lead for myself, obviously. Who else could play it? Nobody. Nobody understands the nuances of a man who's lived his whole life on the fringes, always smelling like desperation and cheap cologne.
I can certainly see you embodying a certain type of character, Joe. You've mastered the archetype.
Archetype? Stephen, I invented the archetype. The weasel, the rat, the snitch, the guy who knows too much and dies too quick. Every time I get a script, I swear to Christ, I flip to page 60, and there I am, getting my head blown off, or getting betrayed, or betraying somebody else, or just generally being a miserable, conniving son of a bitch. Don't get me wrong, I make a living. It pays the bills. It's given me a beautiful life. But after a while, you start to wonder, you know? Is that all there is? Is that my entire contribution to the cinematic arts? Just variations on a theme of guy you love to hate until he gets what's coming to him? It's like being a character actor is a prison, but a really comfortable, well-furnished prison, with good catering.
I understand the frustration of being typecast. It's a double-edged sword.
It's a goddamn battle axe, Stephen. In this movie, The Measure of a Rat, this is my goddamn counterattack. It's about a man who is all those things. All the things they've always put me in. But then, something happens. Something that forces him to ask himself, what's my real measure? Not just what society expects, or what my rap sheet says, or what some casting director thinks my face can do.
So where does this journey begin? How do we open on such a man?
Oh, the opening, Steven. This is crucial. We open on a close-up. Not just any close-up. A Panavision close-up. The kind that makes you feel like you can count the pores, the sweat, the fear. The lens focuses, almost aggressively, on an aging man's hands. They're not pretty hands. They're gnarled, a little swollen, nicotine-stained around the cuticles. They've seen things, these hands. They've shuffled cards, counted dirty money, maybe even held a gun once or twice, but never really fired it with conviction. They're hands that have always been on the take, or on the run, or reaching for an easy out. And they're trembling, just a little, holding a half-smoked cigarillo, the ember glowing like a defiant, dying eye in the pre-dawn gloom of a derelict pier.
That's very specific.
It has to be specific. This isn't some CGI spectacle. This is raw human frailty, man. The sound design is crucial here. Just the distant lapping of oily water against pilings, the mournful cry of a forgotten seagull. Then slowly, agonizingly slowly, the camera begins to pull back, revealing the man attached to these hands. He's slumped on a rotting wooden bench, a cheap rumpled suit hanging on him, a fedora pulled low. This is Artie the Whistle Wexler, my character. He's watching something, or waiting for someone. The frame is wide, encompassing the grimy majesty of a fading industrial skyline, all rust and regret, under a bruised sky that's just starting to hint at the sun. He looks like a guy who's been up all night. Or all his life.
Artie the Whistle Wexler. I like it. So he's your archetypal informant? The guy who, well, always knows a guy?
Exactly. Artie's a survivor. He's been working the angle since he was old enough to shoplift a pack of smokes. He's a low-level guy, a street corner oracle, trading information for protection, for a cut, for staying out of the way of the real monsters. He's got sources everywhere. Dirty cops, small-time dealers, union bosses, disillusioned politicians. He knows whose cousin is sleeping with whose wife, who's skimming off what construction project, where the bodies are really buried. He's a walking, talking, chain-smoking database of urban decay. He's the guy who tells you in risky business to call Guido, you know? But this isn't about calling Guido, this is about becoming Guido. Or something even worse, or maybe even better.
So what's his predicament? What forces Artie, this consummate survivor, to confront his own measure?
That's the genius of it, Steven. It ain't about money, or power, or even revenge. Not at first. Artie stumbles onto something so profoundly, sickeningly wrong, that even he can't stomach it. It's not just another heist, or a turf war. It's a systemic, soul-crushing corruption that involves children. I'm talking trafficking, man. The kind of evil that makes the hair on your arms stand up. The kind of evil that makes you want to crawl out of your own skin.
Goodness. That escalates quickly.
Yeah, it does. Because for the first time in his life, Artie can't just turn a blind eye, can't just sell the info and walk away with a clean conscience. Because there is no clean conscience here. And worse, a kid he vaguely knows. A shy, artistic kid from his neighborhood who works at the local diner. This kid accidentally sees something, hears something, and now the monsters are coming for her. And Artie? Artie is the only one who knows. The only one who can do anything.
So, he's forced into a protector role? The unlikely hero?
Unlikely hero? He's the unlikeliest hero, Steven. He's never protected anything in his life except his own ass. He's a coward by design. A rat survives by being small, by being overlooked, by knowing when to run, when to squeal. Now, all of a sudden, he's got to be a lion. He's got to stand up. He's got to fight. And he doesn't know how. But he has to. Because nobody else will. The system he's always played. The dirty cops. The compromised feds. They're all in on it. Or too scared. Or too stupid. It's just Artie and this kid.
That's a powerful internal conflict. A man forced to betray his own nature for something larger than himself.
Exactly. This ain't some big, muscle-bound superhero shit. This is a guy who, his whole life, has used his brain to avoid confrontation, suddenly having to use every dirty trick, every angle, every piece of street knowledge he's ever hoarded, to engage in a fight he can't possibly win. He still uses his rat skills, you see? He's still manipulating, still digging for dirt, still playing one side against the other. But now, it's not for personal gain, it's for salvation. For the goddamn soul of it all. He's not trying to survive for himself anymore, he's trying to survive for someone else. That's the difference. That's the measure.
And how does he do it? Does he triumph? In a traditional sense?
Triumph? What's triumph in this world, Stephen? No, Artie doesn't ride off into the sunset. There's no big heroic last stand where he takes down the whole empire in a hail of bullets. That's too easy, too Hollywood. This is real life, this is the struggle. He makes sacrifices. He takes hits. He uses his intelligence, his network of grime, his ability to disappear and reappear. He exposes just enough of the truth, creates just enough chaos and fear among the powerful that they pull back. The kid gets away. The ring is broken, at least for a while.
A quiet victory, then. But a profound one. For him.
Profound for him, yeah. He sees himself for the first time not as a rat, but as a protector. A force for good, even if it's a tiny, ugly force for good. He doesn't walk away clean. He's more scarred, more alone, probably more broken than before. But there's a flicker of self-respect, of honor. And that, my friend, is more than any studio exec wants to touch. They want a clear hero, a clear villain, a clear win. They want me to play the guy who gets whacked in Act 2.
I hear you, Joe. The commercial realities often overshadow the artistic vision. It's a challenge to get stories like that funded. Stories that delve into the complex morality without offering easy answers.
Tell me about it. I went in there, pitched this thing, hard on my sleeve, talking about redemption, about what it means to be a man in a world that only sees you as a type. And they just sat there, looking at me like I was speaking Martian. "Joe," one of them says, "can't we just get you in a buddy cop movie? Or another villain role? You're so good at being bad, Joe." "Good at being bad. I am bad, you miserable prick. But I'm also more than bad. We all are. That's the goddamn point."
It certainly sounds like a passion project, Joe. A very personal one.
It is. It's my testament. My middle finger to the industry that kept me in a box. It's my character, Artie, screaming, "I'm not just the rat. I can be something more." But they don't want to hear it.
Perhaps the world isn't quite ready for the measure of a rat yet, Joe. But I hope one day it will be.
Yeah, maybe one day, Stephen. Maybe one goddamn day. Until then, another guy gets whacked on page 60.
Indeed.